very pleased that Mark Brown is able to give a talk about his experiences on the National Pawnee Grasslands. Mark is a longtime member of the Bird Club, an excellent photographer, and an excellent birder. I think there'll probably be a write-up about his big year in 2021 in the next newsletter. So, Mark, here you are. Go ahead.
All right. So thanks y'all for being here. Yeah, I've been to the grasslands 3 different times. I've been in Iowa resident all my life, but I do like to travel. And I've been to Colorado many times, and Pawnee National Grassland is a good place to visit if you're a birder, and even if you're a non-birder. So this is more going to be like an anecdotal account of basically what I've seen there. It's not a complete account of what can be seen, but should give you a pretty good idea and hopefully inspire you to go or revisit sometime. So, and February 7th was when I gave this talk the first time. That's why the date is wrong. So let's move on here. So just a general overview. It's located in Northeast Colorado. It's a very large area, 775,000 acres. I think someone asked before that I said 190,000, but that was wrong. But yeah, 27% of it is public land. So most of it is private, grazing, cultivated land rented out. It's got an average elevation of about a mile. It all started back in the 1930s when mismanaged farmland was bought back by the federal government in chunks. So it was, I think it started by the the Department of Agriculture was the first branch of the government to take it over. And then by 1960, it was named Pawnee National Grassland. And there's a map of Colorado right here. And so Denver is this kind of, I don't know if you can see my arrow, but it's kind of like at this large city up here. And then these red areas are the 2 main sections of the grasslands. So there's a small western section, and then to the east, a larger square section that borders Wyoming. And here's kind of what it looks like today. All the green that you see on the map is the public land. So most of the public land is over in the west section. So hence that's where I've spent most of my time. There is just hundreds and hundreds of miles of roads in both parts. And it can be kind of intimidating at first, but any one of these small towns in the area, you can get a pretty good road map, even just the general, Atlas Gazetteer. It would be a good start because you want to have a good map when you navigate the grasslands. Phone service is iffy. But yeah, there's in the east section over here is like probably one of the more famous landmarks. It's the Pawnee Buttes, where there's like a 1.5 2 mile hiking trail. It's actually probably the most scenic because overall, I mean, it's like, it's rolling grasslands, kind of interspersed prairie mixed in there. It's, it's kind of scenic, but not like grand scenic, like you would, how you would picture most of Colorado, like the mountains. But it's good for its wildlife, for sure. So if you ever want to visit, you can stay, as rustic or as modern as you'd like. You could stay at Greeley, Fort Collins, Alt, and just all these places are within a half-hour's drive. My last time I stayed in the town of Alt, which was only about 15 minutes south of the west portion. It has, plenty of small hotels, some restaurants. It was good enough. If you wanted to camp, there is one campground near Briggsdale that you can reserve a few spots. It's open from April to November. It's very basic. You can, there's picnic tables there. There's like some restrooms, there's horseshoe pits, but it doesn't even have electricity. So it is very primitive camping. And if you even want to go total primitive camping, you can just camp out in any of the public lands within 300 feet of the road. and just pitch a tent. That's just like the old days Western experience. Costs nothing, no reservations necessary. Just pitch a tent and you're there. So I'm going to start by talking about the non-bird life. And just to talk about iNaturalist a little bit, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of a worldwide citizen science project that basically everybody can input their photographs of plants, animals, fungi, you know, just everything. It's kind of like just eBird for the entire, you know, everything that's alive in the world. It's pretty new, you know, it started in 2008. So it's just like an ongoing database of just of everything that's seen in the world, if whoever wants to open an account. And a recent project was started just about a year and a half ago, where it's like anything that's entered into the database, if it was seen within Pawnee National Grasslands, then it gets flagged and it gets put into this, just basically, you know, it just gets categorized into this, you know, it's very new, you know, so 639 species have been identified so far, 254 bird species. And you know, it's new because there's actually been 300 bird species seen at Pawnee Grasslands. You know, 22 mammals so far. And most of these, of course, are arthropods. So just we'll start with the most obvious thing to look for other than birds would be mammals. So we're going to start with them. You will see black-tailed prairie dogs if you spend any amount of time in the grasslands. They're common, they're loud, you know, they occur in colonies of sometimes even up to 100 or so. And I'm going to mention them often because a lot of bird life in the grasslands are, you know, are associated with prairie dogs. You know, some just like to live with them, some like to eat them, but yeah, there's just lots of reasons to, you know, that prairie dogs are important to the grasslands. I know, you know, some people, I think we've all heard, some people consider them a pest out in the West, but they're actually really important for biodiversity. And I think they're important to have around. I think they're kind of cute. So anyway, that's one of the mammals you will see for sure. The other mammal you will see is the pronghorn, which are, you know, a beautiful mammal. It's the fastest land mammal in North America. It hits speeds of up to 60 miles an hour. What I did not know about them before was even as fast as they are, they cannot jump. So if you're approaching them, they will, you know, they'll try to scamper away, but there's a lot of barbed wire fence in the grasslands. And it's recommended that you approach them carefully because they will have to kind of limbo underneath the barbed wire. And if they, you know, it's better if they do that carefully rather than trying to get away from you so they don't injure themselves. So these are a couple, and this might be a young male right here, this on the left. There's a female. And the male is kind of regal looking. He's got a nice mane, got a couple nice set of horns there. Jackrabbits, something I've seen there. There are two species. There is a white-tailed jackrabbit and a black-tailed jackrabbit. So when you have this view of a jackrabbit, to me, I'm not good enough with rabbits to identify them, you know, without seeing their tail. This is just a jackrabbit species. I have to see them basically hop away, and then, you know, there you go, black-tailed jackrabbit. It is the more common of the two. I still haven't seen a white-tailed yet. White-tailed is the one that does occur in Iowa still. I haven't seen one for over 30 years, but they are still, they said they're still supposed to be around. Black-tailed is pretty much a Western species, though, and they're still common in parts of Great Plains to the west. So probably the most sought after mammal of the grasslands would be the swift fox. Most people consider this, it's very similar to the kit fox. So the purple you see here on the map, that's the range of the kit fox. And the green is the current range of the swift fox. The outline here, you can barely see it on the map, but it's like the former range. So it's been reduced pretty drastically because of habitat loss. But Where they do occur right now, their population is pretty stable. But, you know, like most foxes, they're pretty secretive. It takes a lot of luck to run across them. And I did happen to run across one on my very last visit. So when I was cruising around Wildlife Drive, it was really early in the morning, and I just happened to see this kind of sitting on a hilltop. I don't know if it was outside its den or what, but they're pretty, you know, compared to a red fox, which you would also see at Pawnee. It's more of a just overall tan color. It's very small. It's about the size of a domestic cat. So the size and the bland coloring will give it away. And those of us who take pictures, we all know that a car makes a really good blind, and this was taken from my car. But I've also learned the hard way that you got to take a few shots off before you even turn the car off. When I took this picture, I took a few shots, turned the car off, but once I turned the car off, it bolted. I don't know if it was the sound of just the slight sound of the ignition turning off, or if it was just the change in the noise, but he was really sensitive to it, and he bolted, and that was the last view I had of him. It was right there. And I just watched him, and he did not stop until he disappeared over the hill. But yeah, you can see their overall beige color. They do have a little black tail there, but it's a pretty cool mammal, and it was one of the highlights of my last trip. So I was talking to Terry about rattlesnakes earlier, but I'd never been lucky enough to see one. I did see a couple bull snakes. It is the same species of bull snake that we have in Iowa. Iowa, they're on the decline. At Pawnee, they're still doing pretty well. You know, without even looking, I ran across a couple on the roadways. This is why you drive slow. You know, you got to give snakes the right of way. But this was a nice size one. It was about 3.5, 4 foot. And you can tell a bull snake, they have some nice black markings on their lips right there. And they have a pattern that kind of changes as you go from the head down to the tail. Always one of my favorites. Another cool herp that you can see is a shorthorn lizard. This one's the greater shorthorn lizard, and it is the only species in that part of the state. This was a baby. It's probably about 2 or 3 inches. And then the adult, which is a little more brightly patterned. We don't have any species of these in Iowa, but they're pretty well represented in the West, and even more so when you get to the South and Southwest. And this one, I saw these guys on a trip back in like 2012. It was like July, pretty hot day. Lizards are active even when it's very hot. So anybody who knows me well knows I love bugs. So everywhere I go, I'm going to take pictures of a lot of arthropods. And so I could go on all day about them, but I'm just going to show a few pictures of some of the unique ones that I've seen out there. This is just a species of velvet ant that's a specialty. It's a specialty of the West. Velvet ants are, you know, they're like wasps, where the males are the only ones that can fly. The females are wingless. Here's a species of checkered beetle that I've never seen anywhere else. Another pretty cool beetle. And that's an Uncas skipper. This is the only place I've ever seen an Uncas skipper. It's a plains and Southwest specialty, but it's got pretty nice markings there. It's one of the grass skippers. So one of the coolest critters that I ran across out there back in 2012, this was late July. I had no clue what I was looking at when I ran across these guys. I was wandering around a field, and I came across this pool that had been obviously shrinking. It was about, I don't know, maybe 4 inches deep. And there were hundreds, if not thousands, of these little guys swimming in there. They were swimming upside down. They were swimming right side up. They looked like they were about 2-3 inches long. They looked like little horseshoe crabs. I really was just dumbfounded by what they were. So I did a little research and found out that they were tadpole shrimp, which is a group of crustaceans. I'd say they kind of look like horseshoe crabs in a way. They're represented throughout the world, but they don't occur in the wild unless they have the perfect conditions. They're I think there was one other record I saw on iNaturalist of them in Pawnee National Grasslands, but I've seen some records out in Utah, some in Arizona. They occur in places where you have these vernal pools that are temporary, where they basically go with the monsoon cycles, but they can withstand all kinds of drought and all these different extreme conditions. And they have to have these conditions where the eggs completely dry out and then rehydrate, and it has to be like perfect timing. Otherwise, it can go several cycles, but they can be eggs for over 20 years, I've learned. And I have learned in the process that they are sold commercially as aquatic pets. If you can buy these dried up eggs and you can raise them, hydrate them, and they turn into these little tadpole shrimp that live for about, I don't know, a couple months, I suppose. I'd never heard of them before doing this research, but I thought it was pretty cool to run across them out in the wild. So here's a few. I did pick up a few and took them out so I could get a more detailed picture of them. I put one on its back. They got really detailed rings and like this network. They're kind of hard to describe, actually. The close up of they got 3 eyes. That's where their name Triops comes from. And there's another view of the ventral side. And to this date, I've never run across these again. I don't know how you would actually look for them, but it's just, I think I was just wandering in the right place at the right time when I saw these guys. So now we're going to get to the birds that I've run across. So the official data of the birds seen at Pawnee is 301 species since 1962. And a lot of that is migrant species. Crow Valley Campground is a riparian area. It's got a lot of trees. But I'm going to focus mostly on some of the specialty breeders that I run across, because I've only been there in the breeding season. So, and that's what most people who visit the area want to see. That's the specialty. I would say that May and June are the best times to visit. My last visit was in June of 2021. I was specifically targeting a couple things. It has been designated as an IBA by the National Audubon Society. So we'll start with just some really common stuff that's familiar to us in Iowa. Everybody will see a western meadowlark if you spend any time there. It's nice because you don't have the easterns to confuse you. They don't have any easterns. Every meadowlark you see is going to be a western. You don't even have to hear it sing. But you do want to hear them sing because I think it's got one of the nicest songs in the country. Loggerhead shrikes. If you go there in late summer, you'll see these like juvenile types. It's got some striping underneath. It's got a gape there that it's noticeable. But there's loggerhead shrikes are common in Colorado, where unlike in Iowa, they're pretty spotty and local in southern Iowa. That's one thing you should run across if you spend any amount of time there. Horned larks, you will see a ton of those. When you go in May and June, the breeding season, most things won't have fledged yet. The horned lark is an exception because they have started breeding in February and March. It's one of the earliest breeders in the country, and pretty much throughout the country. In fact, driving around Hawkeye, I've heard them singing their full song since about early February. But the juveniles, if you've never seen one, they can be actually quite confusing. They look like, I don't know, a sparrow. Yeah, they're kind of nondescript, so they can kind of throw you off. But if you get a good look at the bill, you can tell that it's got the general shape of a horned lark. There's a look at a female, and then the male. I don't know what this one was doing. I don't know if it was just panting because it was so hot, but it was just basically on the road and it would not leave when I drove by. My guess is it was near nest. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. If you do go out and walk around, kind of be aware of the warning signs that these birds give you, because a lot of these are ground nesters out there, and they'll let you know if you're getting too close. So here I probably was a little too close. Just didn't know it at the time. So this Pawnee is one of the better places to actually see a common nighthawk rather than just hear them or see them at dusk, they're flying here. They'll fly during the day. They'll perch up on fence posts. Yeah, just really, really nice looks at common nighthawks can be expected. And they're at eye level. And I think I don't know if they're a little bit paler than the ones we have in Iowa, but they're the same species, but you can just get much better looks. So one of the first specialty birds I'll talk about, yeah, I guess I'll start with the burrowing owl, because it is, if anyone pays attention to the American Birding Association, it was named the 2022 Bird of the Year, taking the reins from the pileated woodpecker. They try to name a bird of the year that has some personality, some charisma, something that's going to bring some conservation awareness. And burrowing owl qualifies. It's got a lot of facial expressions. Everybody loves owls, and it's grassland habitats, and plains is all that kind of habitat is in decline. So it's a good choice. It is migratory in most of the United States, including Colorado. Only in the southwestern portion are they year-round. And they have this large population in South America too. And in fact, I think there's over a dozen subspecies. I don't know if any of them are ever going to get split off, but I've heard rumblings about the Florida population being a different species, but probably not anytime soon. The population at Pawnee is pretty stable, and they like to be around prairie dog towns. And so there's one I ran across in 2012. Yeah, I think this is a young bird. It's kind of ratty looking here. It's got some feathers sticking out. They are generally around prairie dog towns, and they coexist with them in harmony. Unlike the other birds that want to eat them, these guys, they like to use them for their burrows, and that's it. They like to, I think they also benefit from the alarm calls of the prairie dogs, because they do have a lot of the same predators, like coyotes and badgers. So, and burrowing owls, they tend to eat smaller rodents, insects, amphibians. They're not really known to go after prairie dogs unless they're sick, or, I think they've been known to like eat very young ones before, but they generally coexist in harmony. And this is one I ran across this last trip. And I think it's important to mention that I've never actually targeted burrowing owls at Pawnee before. I've just run across them without looking, which means I think if you were targeting them, it would be pretty easy to come across them. Just look for the prairie dog towns, and they like to prominently perch up on fence posts and rocks and stuff like that, especially in the evening. And you just got to love their expression. So raptors is another star of the grasslands. And Swainson's hawk is probably the most common. It's got the long migration route here. So this yellow is the route that they take every year. So right now, this is where they are. They're down in Argentina. But during the breeding season, it will be the default hawk you see when you drive around, kind of like the red tail we have when we drive around here. Now, this map is kind of confusing. It says that they're breed all throughout Iowa. I don't really agree with that. I think they do breed like in Western Iowa, but I think they've been migrating throughout the entire state in the last couple of years. And I think this map just kind of reflects the reporting on eBird of how of the sightings of these Swainson's hawks. They're one of the hawks. Their diet varies depending on the season. I didn't know that before. So there's an example of one. It's got a kind of a dark, deep orange bib, a nice white throat, and then kind of a brown unmarked back to it. Another look. And here's a shot in flight. This picture was actually taken in Iowa a couple of years ago. I ran across one right at the exit 4 at North Liberty, just incidentally. I didn't have a flight shot that I took at Pawnee, so I included this one. Another raptor you can see out there is golden eagle. They're widespread, across the country, but in Pawnee National Grasslands, they will occur year round. And I've only had one sighting of golden eagle, but it was an immature. And then I included this kind of lousy picture just to show that they are identifiable even from a distance. These white patches you see here on the wings, and then this large white band on the tail are all good field marks for a golden eagle. And here's a shot of an adult showing the gold mantle right there. This was another photo that I actually got in Iowa last year. I finally got my Iowa golden eagle. Way overdue. Another specialty that you might look for is a ferruginous hawk. It is considered the largest hawk in North America. But if you see them kind of by themselves, I can't really tell that they're the largest hawk. It's by like an inch or something. But it looks like the size of a red tail if it was just kind of sitting by itself. And they are one of the year-round residents of the grasslands. In fact, it's one of the few places in the country where they're year-round. I've actually only photographed one, and it was just its very last trip. And it's a very distant photo, but it has some good field marks that you can tell it's a ferruginous. So this white on the edge of the wings, a very good field mark for ferruginous hawk. You can see the orange on the back here. Another good field mark, the white tail. So even though it's a lousy look, it is identifiable from a distance. And kind of another angle of the same bird. And so I've included a little bit better looks of the ferruginous hawk just to show some more ID features. Here you can see that they actually have feathered and orange on their legs there. This picture was actually taken in Santa Cruz Flats in southern Arizona, which is a good place to find wintering ferruginous hawks. And also taken in Arizona. This one shows some ID features that are, pretty key. A lot of rufous on the back, rufous on the legs, feathers all the way down to the legs. And a long gape there. It goes almost to the back of the eye. So there's about 8 sparrows, I'd say, that breed on Pawnee National Grasslands. I'm going to cover a couple specialties that I've seen there. One is the brewer's sparrow. It's the most common sparrow much of its range. It isn't. It's kind of plain. Not much to look at there. I'd say it's pretty comparable to our clay-colored sparrow. Unmarked breast, just a general kind of blah gray tan pattern about him. It's got kind of a stripy head, but it is kind of a specialty that we don't get here in Iowa. Other ones that you can run across are ones that are familiar to us. We have, stuff like lark sparrow, Savannah sparrow, grasshopper, vesper you can run across. Cassin sparrow is one that I did not include because I've never seen one at Pawnee, but it is one of the targets that people go after if you visit the grasslands. But probably the most interesting sparrow, and lark bunting is considered a sparrow, is the lark bunting. It is the state bird of Colorado. It's been the state bird since 1931. It is very abundant. It's a really striking bird, and you will see it if you spend enough time there. It has the most striking plumage difference in change among the entire sparrow family. So here's a look at a female. They're very thick-billed. They have varying amounts of black around on the malar area here. Immature males look pretty similar to the females. They have some large white patches on their wings. And then the adult male in breeding plumage is very, very striking. And you'll see a ton of them, and they'll perch up along the road for you. They're usually pretty cooperative. So some of the real specialties that people look for, one of them is the mountain plover. This map here shows their current range, their breeding range in orange here. So Pawnee National Grassland right there is kind of right in the heart of their range. The winters down here, Southern California, Southern Arizona, and down into Mexico. It's kind of a strange shorebird. It actually avoids mountains, so I don't know how it got its name, mountain plover. It likes grasslands and plains. Interesting fact is that it makes 2 simultaneous nests. If it lays like 5 or 6 eggs, it'll split it into 2 nests. The mother will incubate one, the father will incubate the other one, which is kind of cool. Also found near prairie dog towns. A couple of research has shown that they like prairie dog towns for I'll show you a picture here. Notice that this is a distant picture, like showing how hard they can be to see. So they're not much there, as far as plumage. It's probably the plainest shorebird we have. So it does help to have a scope when you're birding this area sometimes. There's a little closer view, but it's pretty heavily cropped. In breeding plumage, they have this black eye line here and a little bit of darker cap. Otherwise, it's plain, but it's kind of by design. So like I said, like the reason they like prairie dog towns is because prairie dogs have a habit of just kind of clearing out vegetation. So you have this bare dirt, and then they'll use those areas to nest in, so they're inconspicuous to predators. And research has also shown that they like the feces of these prairie dogs attracts a lot of the bugs that they like to eat. So mountain plovers use them as much as they can. So there's another look. And this one I happened to spot because it happened to be moving. They blend in really well. You can see some prickly pear cactus kind of scattered around. If they're moving, and you're looking carefully with a lot of patience, you can spot them. Not the most striking, but they're pretty cool birds. So another specialty here that you'd want to see would be the thick-billed longspur, formerly called McCown's longspur. There's a slew of name changes in recent years. I think this name change has to do with some Civil War history or something. I don't know. I think McCown had something to do with the Confederacy, but I'm just not up on all the history. But in any case, thick-billed longspur, their breeding range starts in northern Colorado and goes up to southern Canada. So Pawnee is actually the southern limit of their breeding range. And this of the 2 longspurs, this one's the most abundant that you should see with some patience and if you cover, a lot of ground. So we'll start out with the female here. This is what, if you were to go to southern Arizona in the winter, they're all going to look like this. So the non-breeding males, females, they're going to be pretty drab. They look like sparrows. It does have a thick bill. I think that's pretty noticeable here, but they blend in. And I think only by this, I think there's a little rufous on the wing here that kind of helps in their ID, but if you don't study them long enough, it's hard to tell without being associated with a male which one of these longspurs it is. This one happened to be paired up with a male. Another look at the female. They tend to prefer like the shorter grass prairies compared to the chestnut collard, but they will occur in generally the same type of areas. So I got lucky driving around these roads where there was some recent rains and it's been dry out in the west. I think we all know that, but a recent rain had puddled some water on the side of the road, and I came across a group of about maybe a dozen or so that were coming back and forth to the water just to drink. And so I basically just stayed in my car and shot some pictures of these guys. And here's a first look at a male. So much more striking. There's the much more pronounced rufous on the wings. They got varying amounts of black on their belly. It's more of a gray and black pattern and white on their face. So that's actually a pretty handsome bird. Now to look at male that actually on the grasslands. This is pretty early in the morning, so there's still some dew on the grass there. This one's actually got a bug in his mouth. Another look of him facing us. This one's got quite a bit of black. So you can see these from a distance if they're facing you the right way. As you can see, I spent a lot of time with this bird. You know, I had a bug in his mouth. I just had a hard time leaving him. So both species of longspurs, they do this elaborate flight display where they'll kind of fly up in the air, kind of do their song and kind of flutter back down. It's I think it's kind of a mating display, but when they do this, you can get a look at their tail pattern, which is pretty striking. I think there are subtle differences in the tail pattern between the thick-billed and the chestnut-colored longspur, where they retain in the winter, and that can help ID them if you get a good enough look. So my main target of my last trip to the grasslands was chestnut-colored longspur, because that's the bird that has eluded me for quite a few years. And they're less common overall than the thick-billed. They have the same general range, you know. And again, it's like the southern limit of their breeding range, and it's a lot more spotty in this area. There's a lot more if you go up north into Montana and North Dakota. But this is probably Pawnee is probably the more accessible place to get a good look at these birds. They winter down in southern Arizona, Mexico, West Texas also. This is a former ABA Bird of the Year, 2016. So a lot of love for the birds of Pawnee from the ABA. We'll start with the female that I ran across. Again, kind of plain. There's a little hint of a chestnut collar there, a little orange. Another pose. So here's a good look at a male. And from a distance, if they're facing you the right way, they stand out like a sore thumb. And this was seen from quite a distance. There's a horned lark there, it kind of out of focus, but sitting on a cow patty. I forgot to mention about cows. You will see cows kind of sharing the road with you. So that's one thing to be aware of if you ever take a trip out there. And so here is basically the same cow patty that the horned lark was on before was taken over by this lark. So it gave me a pretty good photo op because he actually, you know, perched up onto something. Really good look at the back of his neck. It's a really bright rufous collar. They have varying amounts of black on their chest in breeding plumage. There's another look. I don't know, it is kind of taller grass here, I think, than the other one. These took a while to find. It took me about 2 passes on the road where I'd heard they'd been seen to actually get these birds. And it was, you know, it was like almost noon. So it was kind of odd. You know, usually you have the best birding like early in the morning and in the evening, but yeah, this was like a midday find that I just happened to run across these. And there's a good look at one that's perched up on a wire. This was taken from my car. You know, I think the best pictures I got are from my car, just not getting out because they don't care that you're there. So just some additional resources. If you ever want to go out there, the federal government, the U.S. Forest Service website gives you some information about possible road closures, where to get maps of the area, weather information, camping information. The second link I posted here gives you a detailed map of the 21-mile self-driving tour, which is located in the southeast portion of the west portion of the grasslands. It's that smaller portion that the map I showed you earlier. So it's a detailed stop. It'll, you know, they're actually numbered stops, and it will say, okay, this is a good spot for thick-billed longspur. This is a spot for chestnut-bill, you know, and you know, so forth. So it's a good place to start because I know it can be kind of overwhelming when you see this huge area of the grasslands. So I would say every target bird is possible on the this 21-mile loop. Use eBird. I think that's one of your best resources if you're targeting any species out there, because mountain plovers and the prairie dogs, they tend to move around a lot. So eBird, they'll actually have some pins on certain spots of the roads, and that's how I actually located the mountain plover, because it had been located previously by other people. So that was one of the areas I targeted. You can kind of just give you, you know, what's been seen the past week, or there's a lot of ways you can use eBird, but it's a really good resource. If you want a kind of a low stress way to visit the grasslands, you can hire a bird guide. So I include this link, Colorado Birding Adventures. I think a lot of us know Carl Bendorf, formerly lived in Iowa. He's now a birding guide out there. He's good company. He has a very high success rate in the birds of Pawnee National Grasslands. So because he also eBirds, and I've seen a lot of his sightings, but you know, he's also does Rocky Mountain National Park, and I think he's actually doing a specialty tour in mid-June that includes, it's like a 5-day tour that includes Pawnee and Rocky Mountain National Park, but I'm pretty sure that's sold out right now. But keep him in mind if you ever want to get out there and just have someone show you where all the birds are, because you'll do well with him. And that's all I got. So I appreciate your time, and I'll end on that note. So yeah, I'll take any questions you guys have. I don't know if I'm supposed to stop sharing or unmute or at this point.
No, if people have questions, just go ahead and ask. I do want to say the story I heard about the mountain plover was that whoever identified it could found the bird and could see mountains.
Oh, okay. That I didn't know.
That was the story I was told in Colorado. It's called the mountain plover because whoever identified it said, "Oh, look, I see those mountains over there. Let's call it a mountain plover."
That's, you know,
I don't know if it's true. That
actually makes sense, because yeah, it really, even in the winter, it has nothing to do with mountains. It doesn't even migrate over them.
Yeah, that's the story I was told.
Okay, I buy it. I buy it. So thanks for that.
What times of the year did you go there?
My last time was in June. I've also been there in May, late May, and late July.
What's the temperatures like?
What's that? Temperature?
Well, it's like
it's hot. You know, in June, I think it's supposed to be like in the 80s. It was in the 90s when I was there, and this was early June, like June 4th or 5th. It just happened to be really hot. But I recommend, you know, late May, early June, because that's when things are singing. They're starting to get on their territory, so they're more reliable that way. In late July, things stop singing. You got a lot of messy looking juvenile birds that are very confusing. I mean, you'll still see the specialties. You might have to work harder for them. But yeah, I would recommend late May and then early, you know, to mid-June. It would be like the peak time to visit. And the temperatures would generally be pretty mild. I think that the one thing you need to worry about is wind out there. You know, it can be windy often. And I've also heard that Weld County has the highest, and I didn't want to mention this to, you know, it's scare everybody, but, you know, it has the highest amount of tornadoes of any county in Colorado, but it's still not as much as you would find in Kansas and Nebraska. It's just that, you know, part of the state, because it's so open, you know, is just conducive to that. You just have to be aware of the weather, you know, storms can pop up at any time. So yeah, take water with you, take a good map, and you'll be fine.
I got a question. Did you use iNaturalist to look up any of the non-bird wildlife that you were seeing, or do you think it would be useful?
I think it would be useful. I did not use it because I really haven't started using it until just recently. But I think it would be a good resource. A lot of, you know, rare stuff, even birds, show up on iNaturalist before everything else. Hence the bat falcon down in South Texas. So yes, I think that's a good resource to use. I think eBirds will give you more birds overall, but as far as anything else, you know, if you were into mammals, prairie rattlesnakes, iNaturalist would be the way to go, because they tend to be more specific about locations there, even if you're not encouraged to be specific about certain things. Anyone else?
Have you ever seen a badger?
Yeah, not at Pawnee National Grasslands. They are there, but I've never seen them there. I've only seen a couple, like in Northwest Iowa. At Okoboji, in fact.
Always wanted to see a badger, and I never have seen a badger.
Oh, they're cool. They're cool. They're kind of large and kind of ornery, and they're a sight.
People have seen them by Indian Grass Hills.
Yes, I think I have heard that.
Yeah, there was one down at Cone Marsh about 4 or 5 years ago. And there's been some up in the area of Cedar River Crossing.
Whoa, that's news to me.
Well, that's a lot of flat, sandy soil.
Yeah. It would be good
Right.
territory. They just spend so much time underground. I think there's a lot of them that go undetected.
All right, so keep going to the places I'm going and just keep looking. Okay.
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
Milana has a
You gotta
question,
be
I think.
lucky. What's that?
Milana has a question.
Go ahead.
Which one of the birds is your favorite?
I would say, since I was targeting the chestnut collared longspur, I'd have to go with that one. And that was my one life bird of that little trip.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mark? Mark, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Those pictures
Mark.
were fabulous. Oh my gosh.
Thank
They
you.
were just
Thank you.
wonderful.
Appreciate it.